Hi, everyone. So, we recorded this episode about the Old Course at St. Andrews Ballot literally the day before a pretty big change was announced with regards to the singles queue, or what's now known as the singles daily draw. We re recorded some of this to cover that change in detail. It picks up around the 22-23 minute mark, but both the ballot and the daily draw are covered in this episode. Now, with that out of the way, please. Welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, he's Connor Evers, and today we are headed to the home of golf for a topic that, with the golf travel season about to get underway, it is some essential listening for many golfers who have St. Andrews on the itinerary. But first, Connor, I understand spring has finally arrived to Cincinnati and you've dusted off the golf clubs. How's the old swing feeling these days?
It's everything is good. Yeah, it now finally feels like spring. We've had kind of a very interesting winter here, as probably a lot of people have throughout the United States. But it's been good getting a few swings in and getting on grass, and I love spring. It's great, and Masters is just around the corner, which is always nice as well. But the season starts here coming up momentarily for our travelers. I've mentioned it multiple times the last few podcasts, but for the partners across the pond, the courses, perhaps they're starting to open as well. Kings Barnes actually will open this weekend, and as well as Dumbarnie and Castle Stewart are not far behind them as well. So, DJ, speaking of Scotland and across the pond, you are about to head over. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm making kind of the annual trip for the Scottish Golf Tourism Week. We've attended this event for years. It's a great kind of trade event. Anybody that's in the golf travel business, if you will, in Scotland is there for the most part. And, it's a great way to not only, meet face to face with a lot of your friends and partners, but to also kind of make some introductions with maybe some new places or places that just never really hit our radar. I mean, we obviously we get overseas to check in on places and discover new places, but there's a lot of terrain to cover, and sometimes something just maybe just gets by you, and so it's great to make those connections and then say, okay, next time one of us is in the neighborhood to go lay eyes on it firsthand before we are recommending it. But also hoping to squeeze in a round of golf during this thing. I think I'm playing Castle Stewart. But back to today's episode, we are headed to the home of golf, and we're going to talk about the Old Course at St. Andrews Ballot. Now, year in and year out, the number one topic for questions that we receive from, either our members or folks who are interested in traveling overseas, Old Course at St. Andrews tee times is the number one topic, and the ballot accounts for many of those questions. And, it's not rocket science by any means, but it could be a little confusing to first-time visitors, especially if you're a group captain and, you got a lot of things that you're juggling in the scope of a trip, and this is just one more thing. And it is a unique process, so it's something that's unfamiliar to us. So we're gonna hope to provide a little bit of clarity for that, and throughout the episode, essentially cover what the ballot is, how it works, and give some insight into really the main question that a lot of folks are asking, which is, what are my odds of success when it comes to the ballot? Connor, you have some recent and fond memories when it comes to the ballot, but why don't you start by walk us through what it is?
Yeah, so there's, like you said, it's perfect. We get so many questions about it, and there's tons of information online. And we've done a previous podcast regarding the guaranteed route, and we wanted to again just have a kind of a guide to how the ballot works. And kind of the goal of today's podcast for DJ and I is just to help make everyone more aware and have clarity going into kind of their decision and just kind of what the ballot just is. But the ballot is essentially a lottery, and that's kind of how it works. And DJ will talk more kind of about that process, but essentially it is just a lottery. The ballot is conducted by the St. Andrews Links Trust, which is the organization that manages the Old Course and several others on behalf of the town as well. So the new course, the castle, the Jubilee, other courses within the Links Trust, they manage as well, and obviously with the ballot specifically for the old course. And approximately for the ballot, half of the tee times on a yearly basis that are played in the old course are actually allocated via the ballot. So groups kind of think, how many times are for authorized providers such as Howard and Baker that has guaranteed times versus the ballot and all these different things. And good news is about half of those times are allocated for the ballot, which is great. And we'll talk about buying that lottery ticket if you hit for the first time. And I was one of those people. I balloted, again, this was very late in the season. I think it was around the 25th or 26th of October of 2022. I can't remember the exact date, but it was definitely more later in the kind of the year in the fall. I balloted once. It was in the middle of the week, and it was my friend Larkin and I. So it was two of us, and we got on. I think our tea time was right around noon or 12:30. So it was like the ideal time of the day. Sun was out, and it was a fantastic experience. So, again, we'll talk about the planning and what to do and not to do. Don't take my advice of just balloting one day. I was also there during a closure, which we'll talk about the closures and how to plan this as well. So I didn't do what we would recommend for any of our groups, but I was successful. So again, DJ and I's goal and what have you today is to increase your odds and to go through the process. So don't take what I did for your advice. But I was successful being the balloting just one day. So that was kind of my experience and essentially just what the ballot is for the old course at St. Andrews, DJ.
Yeah, going 1 for 1 is absolutely not representative of things, especially these days. I mean, even myself, I've gone 1 for 3 with the ballot, and that is even perhaps not representative. I mean, we're batting 50-50 among the 2 of us. We'll get into more of that here in a minute, but unwrapping a little more about the ballot in terms of, the nuts and bolts of how it works, like Connor said, it's essentially a lottery. And just like buying a ticket for the lottery, you're going to enter your name into the ballot. Think of it like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. You toss your name in the hat, and you never know what'll happen. Well, in this case, with the ballot, you're entering by 2 p.m., 2 days prior to your desired date of play. So, for example, if you are hoping to play the old course on a Wednesday, you'll enter the ballot by 2 p.m. on Monday. And the ballot runs basically every day through the season, with one notable exception. There's no ballot on Fridays because the old course is typically closed on Sundays. Now, in terms of entering, I should note right up front, if you are traveling with Haversham and Baker, there's nothing needed on your end of things in terms of entering the ballot. Your driver host or your hotel will enter your ballot each day that you are scheduled to do so on your itinerary for you. So nothing needed on your end. But if you are traveling on your own or maybe with another golf travel company, easy to enter. You can basically head to standrews.com, find the ballot page. In fact, I think it's just standrews.com/ballot, and you can enter there. You could also enter in person. Just stop by the old pavilion, which is adjacent to the first tee of the old course, or any St. Andrews Links clubhouse. The most common one's going to be the Links clubhouse out by the first tee of the new and Jubilee, or maybe the Castle course clubhouse as well. You can enter in person there. I think you can call in a ballot entry, but nobody makes phone calls anymore, so we're not going to worry with that. To enter, you'll need a minimum of 2 golfers, first off. If you're traveling solo, unfortunately, the ballot is not going to work for you as far as getting onto the old course. We'll talk more about another option that you've got down the road, but minimum of 2 golfers, and you'll need the name, email address, home club, and handicap for each of your golfers. Now, this next part is super important. You're only limited to 1 ballot entry per group. Do not try to game the system by entering multiple entries and shuffling around the names within your party or something like that. The ballot system will pick up on those duplicates and all of your entries will be canceled. So limit it to just 1 entry per group. From there, the ballot will close at 2 p.m., and then the results are posted right around 5 p.m. that same day. So you'll essentially know roughly 2 days in advance whether you are or are not playing the old course. What happens next sort of depends on how you've planned your trip. And for that, Connor, I'm going to kind of lean on your expertise here because you're dealing with the ballot each and every day, planning trips for our members. Walk us through kind of the couple different routes and your approach when it comes to planning a group that intends to ballot.
It's a good question. And kind of the biggest thing that we start with is dates for the trip and what dates the group plans on being in the St. Andrews area. The reason why is the nice thing about St. Andrews and the Old Course is the closure dates. So if you go on to the St. Andrews website and go, actually, I'll walk through it right now with everyone. If you go on to the St. Andrews Links website, go under golf, which is one of the tabs at the top, courses, click on the Old Course, and there's going to be a section on there that'll say course status and updates. And you can actually see the calendar of events throughout the whole year from a tournament perspective. And there's going to be dates that there's going to be no ballots or closed for X, Y, and Z. And a lot of the dates, again, in the summers, like early May, early June, are just not good times to go. We'll talk about more of the closure dates in a little bit as well. But really, when it comes to planning it, we start with that. And as you'll notice from year to year, St. Andrews and the Old Course, they keep the dates very cyclical. The dates are very, very much the same. So if for some reason the group wants to go in a time, that the Old Course is closed, we will obviously advise not to do that. Again, that's our goal is to try and increase your odds as much as possible of getting on the Old Course. But the big thing with kind of planning it as well as if you get on one of our itineraries and proposals, you'll see that each day that you're in the St. Andrews area, you are balloting every single day. Again, we are going to increase your odds and try and get you on as many times as possible, as many entries as possible while you're in the St. Andrews area. But it's not a for sure thing of getting on. And for this reason alone, a lot of our groups will plan backup golf. So if you are staying at, say, the Old Course Hotel and you want to play golf everywhere else, we're going to schedule golf at Carnoustie and Kings Barnes and Dumbarton and at other courses that you want to play there on your itinerary. But the same days that you're playing a confirmed round of golf, we're also going to enter you into the ballot. And again, you're going to find out 2 days prior of intended play, as DJ said. And if you are successful via the ballot, great. Obviously, you're going to play the Old Course. But obviously, there's an asterisk with that round of golf that's confirmed, and that's with what we do is usually we're able to reschedule that round of golf to a different day, which is great. And kind of the more planning aspect of things is we like to keep the last day that you're in St. Andrews as an open day, just a ballot day, and it serves as kind of a buffer day, if you will. So if you are successful with the ballot earlier in your week that you're in St. Andrews, we can then use that buffer day to move that round of golf to that last day or play around with it. And when it comes to kind of that backup golf, and really the reason why we will put confirmed rounds of golf on the days you're also balloting is because if you are balloting, say in the midst of the summer, just frankly, because of how busy things are, any really month now, it's challenging to schedule a round of golf at Kings Barnes or Crail or Carnoustie or Glen Eagles, the day of, or maybe a few days prior, if you're unsuccessful with the ballot. So that's the reason why that we do that. So if your intentions are to, hey, I'm not going to schedule any golf, I'm going to hang out, and if I'm not successful with the ballot, I'll try to play somewhere else. Well, your expectations of potentially playing those bigger name top 100 ranked golf courses within the Fife area is unrealistic. Just being frank. So that's the reason why that we would do that. And just note that, when we're going to try our best, as well as our partners across the pond, to move that round of golf that may be conflicting now with your Old Course time being successful with the ballot. It is subject to availability. So there may be something where we are not able to move that round to a different day. But obviously, it's great because you are successful and going to be able to play the Old Course. And just think of that backup round of golf as just being a cost of playing the Old Course a part of it. It's definitely going to be way less money comparatively to buying a package that would include a guaranteed time from that basis. So that's kind of how backup golf works. Everything's kind of subject to availability and the planning process as well. But I would 100% recommend everyone to look on the busy dates that are on the Old Course, St. Andrews Old Course website. And that'll kind of give you a good basis starting off from a scheduling standpoint as well.
No, that's great insight, Connor. I mean, not only from the, you know, beginning at the very beginning in terms of the busy dates, and I can't tell you how many times I've stumbled across someone online or maybe on Twitter or whatever that has said, I came to St. Andrews and turns out there's a tournament, or I've gone to St. Andrews in September when the RNA has the course booked up, but then that backup golf, it's a great point about just kind of build that into that. This is just part of my cost of playing the Old Course. At worst case scenario, if you eat that extra green fee, you're still coming out way ahead. But yet you've got that insurance, if you will, that if you don't hit the ballot and you're thinking you're going to walk on Carnoustie with 48 hours notice in the summer, not happening. So, at least you've got it there. And, if you don't end up playing Carnoustie, well, you're trading it for the Old Course. So, you're checking that huge box that brought you over to begin with. But now kind of shifting to the question that is really the one that is the underlying unspoken question that's often asked, or maybe it really is just kind of spoken right up front, and that is, what are the odds? What are my odds of getting on the Old Course via the ballot? Connor and I are not great examples, having gone 50-50 in our ballot entry. And the unsatisfying answer to this question is it depends. Like everything, it's coming down to supply and demand. If you are entering the ballot in mid-July around the Open Championship, your odds of hitting the ballot compared to, say, mid-April, which would be the shoulder season, or late October, like Connor did, those odds are wildly different. The thing to keep in mind with the Open, it's what draws so many people to the UK in general. And because it's 48 hours in advance, the entire world of golf is in this year Royal Troon, just a couple hours away from St. Andrews. So people can enter the ballot and say, well, if I hit, I'll just drive up to St. Andrews in 2 days. No big deal. And so that means that the number of people that are entering the ballot exceeds the number of tee times many, many times over, especially during those peak summer months. So, it really is going to come down to, when are you traveling? How many people are in your group? How many times you're entering? And Connor's going to talk a little more about that here in a moment. But this is where having an expert in your back pocket can really pay dividends, because, in our case, we have decades of historical data at our disposal that we can then use. Connor and our colleagues can essentially take that data and help to steer you to maybe a window of dates that historically has been a good time to ballot, or maybe a day of the week that's a better day. But what that data again also tells us is that the number of golfers entering is still going to be more than the number of tee times available. Connor, I'm curious, how do you use that data to help steer a group to the right window of time?
Yeah, it's a good point, and also a great point about people just saying, "Hey, I'll just throw my name in the hat if I'm in Scotland. And if I hit it, great. I'll make the trek to St. Andrews and play. And if not, no issues." And the biggest thing when we're kind of looking at giving our groups the best advice and best trying to give them the best odds, if you will, of getting on. And we like to do is have groups be in the St. Andrews area and ballot on Saturdays. Now, the reason why is on Saturdays, there are no commercial times, meaning that tour operators such as Haversham and Baker that has guaranteed times, we can't have any of our groups play on Saturdays. It is not open for that. So it is usually a full ballot day on their calendars. So that's usually when we like to have that kind of buffer day that I was talking about previously. And usually groups will leave on Sundays or what have you. So that last day, it usually gives the most odds again because there are no confirmed tee times on the Old Course that day. It is just purely a ballot day. Again, relatively speaking, that's usually how it works. And the more entries you give yourself, just the better the odds. It's just how blatantly how it works. If you are trying to trek across Scotland and play, the top 25, I'm just throwing this out there, 25 courses, and oh, we're not going to have a guaranteed time in the Old Course, but we're going to go everywhere, but we're only going to be in St. Andrews for a day or two, and you have a large group, which I'll talk about too, your odds decrease. I like to tell groups, if you really want it and you really want to try as much as possible, just stay in St. Andrews for the whole trip. And ballot, 7, 8 days, because again, that increases your odds of getting on. I also tell groups to limit their group sizes as well. So if you are a group of 8 and you're going in again week before the Open, that's going to decrease your odds. There's going to be a lot more people, and it could come to the thing where you're balloting multiple groups, and maybe one 4 ball can get on, the other 4 can't. So that kind of adds to that scenario and dilemma of the group as well, and go more towards the off peak times as well, like DJ said. So April and October are great times to go, but just give yourself more entries as much as possible. Again, don't take my advice of just going there and trying it once. Like I said, I should buy a lottery ticket because of that. So again, give yourself many different entries, and you never know, you might become successful with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the key is that you do just never really know. And St. Andrews, things just have a funny way of happening. I think I said that on our podcast about the tea times. Stuff just has a funny way of coming together. And, a perfect example of this is I was on the Discord message board thing for Golfers Journal the other day, and there was a conversation about the old course and balloting and so forth. And one of the gents there told a story where his son had done the singles queue and slept essentially outside the old pavilion overnight. He decided not to because he'd played the old before. His son gets a tee time later in the day, and he goes to the first tee to take some photos as his son's about to tee off. And what do you know? The other players in his 4 ball didn't show up. And so the guy ran, grabbed his clubs, and with like 15 minutes notice was playing the old course on a Saturday in July with his son. And it just stuff like that just has a funny way of happening. So don't lose the faith. Enter as many times as you can. You really just never know. If all else fails, there is always the singles queue. And cut.
Well, that didn't last too long, DJ.
No, it really didn't. That little segment aged about 24 hours because literally after we recorded this, the St. Andrews Links Trust announced a pretty big change with regards to what was known as the singles queue, and it's now known as the singles daily draw. As we are recording this separate segment, if you will, today was the first day that the new system has gone into play. If you're unfamiliar, most days the old course ends up with open slots on the tee sheet, which they fill on kind of a first come, first serve basis. For decades, the the first come side of that equation meant golfers lining up in the small hours of the morning and hoping to score a slot on the tee sheet. But like everything in overseas golf travel these days, the demand for these tee times has just skyrocketed. There was a time, when you could arrive at say 5 a.m. and find a tee time, but now, the first golfers are arriving at like dinner time the night before. I mean, you could be at 18 St. Andrews at the Rusacks and look down on them outside while you're finishing up your dinner. And so the Links Trust has introduced this new system, and the easiest way to think of it is as essentially another ballot for standalone slots on the tee sheet. You sign up in person at either the old pavilion or the Links Clubhouse between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. the day before you're hoping to play. There's a tablet inside the clubhouse. You fill out your information. It will take a photo of you, which is used to verify your identity, which I think is a great addition to the process. And then, you're notified by text message around 5 p.m. of the results. And then you've got a set amount of time to either to accept your tea time, or if you were unsuccessful, you'll go onto a waiting list. You can enter every day. There's no limit, but you do have to be in person in order to enter. Connor, that's kind of the rundown on the new daily draw. I'm curious, what do you think of the new system?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. If you go on social media and look at some of those posts, there's going to be different sides of the coin of the opinion on it. We'll just leave it at that. But it's been interesting for our group specifically that they were planning on balloting for this year for travel in 2024 and may have been unsuccessful through the advanced lottery system, and again planning on balloting. This helps a lot. This increases another option and another potential way to play if they are unsuccessful via the daily ballot. For our groups, and when myself and our other two planners here at H&B, when we're talking to our groups, and we're going through the process of how the old course and how to play it works. And when you go through obviously the guaranteed route, we go through the daily ballot, we go through the advanced lottery. And, we'll mention the singles queue from when it was, you're lining up at 9, 10 p.m. the night before. And for a lot of our groups, that simply just was not an option. I reluctantly sometimes said it, depending on our groups. Again, it is kind of that last resort, plan D, if you will, from the four options. And really, this now creates an option. And I feel better about giving that option to some of our groups. And as DJ said, it's now, you have to do this the day prior to intended play, whereas the daily ballot is 2 days prior of intended play. And as we talked about in this episode, we'll always have that backup golf situated. And if you find out, that night prior to the following day that you're successful, and if you have a round, confirmed for the following day, it does become a little bit more of a challenge to potentially move that round of golf. And, it's just one of those things that we're going to have to work with, and St. Andrews going to have to work with, and some of our other partners, in the St. Andrews Fife area for this year, if our groups are successful through it. So just one of those considerations when looking at it as well. So there's pros and cons to everything in life, and it is with this too. But I also think this helps. This increases the odds of getting on, no matter even what month you go, which is good for a lot of our groups. So from my standpoint as a planner for HMB, I think it's a positive. But obviously, there's a couple nuances that could affect the totality of the trip when it comes to it. But I overall believe it's a positive for St. Andrews from my perspective.
Yeah, and it's a good point about the backup golf that, candidly, I hadn't fully considered that now you're getting a notification at 5 p.m. the night before that you're playing the old course. Pro shop at your next round of golf is probably closed, so you or closing up, and so
Mm-hmm.
the chances of being able to phone right then to move it is probably non-existent. That does create a little bit of a wrinkle that I hadn't thought about, but you're right. There's pros and cons to both. For me, it tugs a little bit at the heartstrings sort of thing. The singles queue, I won't beat around the bush. It probably provided the best night of my life. Out there with my brother at midnight, making instant friends with everybody else in line. It feels like every hour of that night is kind of etched into my memory. I remember there was one guy that had forgotten his wallet, and he struck a deal with everybody in line that if I come back in 1 hour, you'll hold my spot, and we did, and it worked out. But that feeling, it's something that's kind of hard, it's impossible to replicate with a ballot, with a text or a digital system. Walking into the old pavilion when the door opens at 6 and giving your name and your name getting called and the high fives all around, and getting a little emotional when your name gets called and giving a hug to the person that's working. All of that happened the night that I waited in line. And again, you just that goes away. And I'm a little bummed by that,
Yeah.
but yet something had to change. There's no denying. There's not a business in this world that should have 50 to 100 of its customers sleeping outside its front door 6 nights a week. That's just not a thing. In 2024, unfortunately, that's just the way it is, and that's a bummer, but I understand fully. that this change needed to happen. They've actually, it was something that we had heard was coming for a bit. We just didn't, it wasn't, set in stone yet. In the end, I think it will be a net add, but I think all of us who did battle, if you will, with the singles cube will always wear it as a badge of honor. It was a great tradition, and something else will fill its place. There will be some new tradition in St. Andrews. They come pretty naturally there. But Connor, I think we have checked all the boxes in terms of the ballot and the new singles daily draw. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. We hit it all for the ballot. I kind of tell groups, treat it like a bonus. Go in if you are planning on balloting. Take our advice, do everything we recommend, but go into it with the thoughts of, hey, I'm going to St. Andrews. I'm going to see the town. It's going to be great. I'm going to enjoy the confirmed rounds of golf that are on my itinerary. And just if we do hit the ballot and are able to play the old course, it is just a cherry on the top of the trip. So if you go into it assuming success, assuming that you're going to play, please do not have that attitude. You're going to more than likely, if you will, you might be disappointed. Playing the old course or not, you're going to have a great trip. You're going to enjoy the town of St. Andrews. It's cool. And you can walk the course. Some of our groups that, they may not, some groups even just don't even ballot. They don't want to play. They don't want to go through the whole process. And on Sunday morning, just walk the course. You can get the course guide. St. Andrews has an app you can download. You can actually have the course guide right on your mobile phone. Or what have you, just walk the course. It's cool just being in town. You can have a picnic on the 18th fairway if you want, which is great. But that's kind of the big thing. And I just tell groups, if you really want it and want to really increase your odds, be in the St. Andrews area as much as possible. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And that's kind of my final thoughts there. But like I said, old course or not, it's going to be a great time. St. Andrews is one of the coolest places in the entire world. So
You're exactly right. My favorite city, probably in the entire world, without a doubt. So, we've covered a lot of ground. As usual, we will kind of note to everything in the show notes, including our more longer form guide to Old Course at St. Andrews Tee Times. If you have any questions, as always, DM us on social media or send us an email, goff@haversham.com. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in. We will be back again soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest, life at its best, and lots of luck with the Old Course Ballot.